Hi, this is Dr. Ryan Wolfert,
And this is Dr. Elena Villanueva.
and we want to thank you for joining us on the Leaky Brain Summit, where we're exploring everything that's tied to leaky brain, a breach of the blood-brain barrier. So we love having our special brain experts on here, and today is no different. Today we have Dr. Michelle Sands. She's a #1 international best-selling author, naturopathic physician, and a highly sought-after female hormone and epigenetics expert. So we're so happy to have her here because we sought after her and got her because she's been featured on ABC, NBC, CBS, and numerous other media outlets. So thank you so much for being here, Michelle. I love that you're here, and I can't wait to hear what you have to share to our audience.
Thank you so much for having me, both of you. It's a treat to have you both here at the same time.
Yeah, we're just super excited to jump right in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I know that you are an epigenetic expert. You and I have really geeked out about that. I also love working in that field of genetics. And, one of the things that I love is how whenever we sit in conversation, how well that you articulate how you combine the power of nature and a person's unique genetics to not only help pull them out of chronic illness, but to optimize their health. And one of the things that you look at when you're doing this is the neuroendocrine system. Can you explain to the listeners what the neuroendocrine system is?
Yeah, so that's such a great question because we often have like two different fields. We often think about the mind as one entity and the body as another, psychology and biology. A lot of times when we're in university, we'll choose a path and we'll either study about brain science or we'll study about physiological science about the biology. And then, when we become professionals, we have to pick a specialty. So you have your psychologist and you have your gynecologist, and they don't really ever talk to each other. But in the body, the brain and the ovaries and all of your other hormone secreting glands all talk to each other. So basically the neuroendocrine system is the connection between your brain and your organs that produce your hormones, so all of your glands.
Well, a lot of health is about balance. It's not just, okay, we got to fix this one. Well, while we fix this one, this other one can get out of balance. So how does that system work? Or even better than that is, what are some signs or symptoms that, the listener will maybe experience when the neuroendocrine immune system is out of balance?
Yeah. A lot of times we think about like women have issues, let's say, with like pelvic pain or endometriosis or PCOS or fibroids, and they'll go to their doctor and they'll look at these gynecological issues, right? These gynecological issues, and maybe also at the same time, the woman is experiencing anxiety, depression, fatigue, brain fog. But a lot of times in conventional medicine that gets overlooked because we're just looking to treat the physical problem. But there was actually a study done in Sweden that actually showed that 33% of women with gynecological issues also have mental health issues. So there's a huge connection there between the two. The brain and the ovaries and also our thyroid and our adrenal glands all talk to each other. And so, we often call estrogen and progesterone sex hormones, and so we think about all of the symptoms that would go along with fertility and sex drive and things like that, but in reproductive health. But estrogen and progesterone also have a lot to do with our brain health, and that might come across as fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, difficulty sleeping, memory issues, concentration issues. And so these are both brain issues, but also ovarian hormone issues as well. And so when we look at them together and not in isolation, we can actually come up with a solution where women and men can feel and actually perform at their best.
Wow. So I kind of want to see if I can tie something together and if you can kind of help me button that up.
Yeah.
And that is so. And you and I remember having conversations around this, a couple of years ago, which was a lot of fun. We talked about how things like environmental toxins, for example, or, whether it's environmental toxins and infections or whatever, but a combination of that toxic load, can really cause endocrine disruption, or it can cause a lot of hormone disruption. Well, we spent a lot of time talking about how it can break down the blood-brain barrier and cause leaky brain, which then can spiral into other issues with brain chemistry imbalance and this and that. But what you're saying too, right, is that the same toxic overload that affects the brain also affects all of our different hormonal systems. And when the hormonal systems get off, then it's like a double whammy, because now not only are you having changes in the brain chemistry and brain function from the toxic load itself and the inflammation itself, but now all of these endocrine glands, all these hormone glands that also help our brain function right, now they're like out of whack, and now they're also affecting the brain.
Yes, exactly. It's really like a symphony that works together. We have our brain that actually sends a signal. We have the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland that are in the brain. They're kind of like the executive CEOs of our hormone function. They actually send messages to our glands, our thyroid, our adrenal glands, our ovaries, and men, the testes. So we have our HPA axis, which is hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, HPT, which is hypothalamic pituitary thyroid, and then HPG, which is the gonadal, so hypothalamic pituitary gonadal. So that's the brain telling the glands to release hormones, right? So that's the brain acting on the glands and kind of controlling the hormones. But then it also works inversely, where the hormones actually have a major impact on the brain and the brain health, whether it be learning and memory, neurodegenerative properties, where it's actually creating neurons, actually strengthening the nerves in the brain. Testosterone does that. We think of testosterone as like the bodybuilding, like getting strong hormone, and it also helps the vessels and the arteries and all the little nerves in the brain to be strong as well. So when we're talking about leaky brain, if these are weak, then the fluids and everything doesn't stay within those channels. And so testosterone is super important. Estrogen is very protective. When we look at women's health, and particularly the length of time a woman is exposed to estrogen is directly related to her stronger brain function, so cognitive function. There's actually a study of 2,000 women, and they were studied for over 12 years. And what they looked at is their onset of their menstrual cycle. So when they entered puberty, they looked at how many pregnancies they had. They looked at the time they went to menopause, and they also factored in whether they were on any bioidentical hormones. And what they found is the longer period of time a woman is exposed to estrogen, and the reason for the pregnancies is actually you're exposed to more estrogen during the pregnancy, so that counts as a little extra. The longer time they're exposed to estrogen in their life, the stronger their brain function was after menopause. And there's some figures actually, those who had 3 or more children actually had a 12% lower risk of dementia, and also Alzheimer's disease as well. Women who actually started their period later than age 16 actually had over a 30% increase for risk for developing dementia. And then women who go into menopause early, so before age 45, and do not supplement with any bioidentical hormones or hormone replacement, actually have a close to a 30% increased risk of dementia as well. So there's a huge connection between exposure to estrogen and proper levels of estrogen for women and their brain function. And then there's similar research, which I focus on women's health, so I don't have all the statistics, but it's similar research with testosterone for men. The lower testosterone in men does relate to increased risk for Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's disease. So there's a huge connection there.
Is that why you call estrogen the brain's bodyguard?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's so important a lot of times. But here's the thing with estrogen and all of our hormones, they all work together. So if estrogen is out of balance with its partner progesterone, then that's not a good situation because you can have too much estrogen in the body, and that can alter your sleep patterns. That can actually lead to weight gain, hair loss, headaches, memory problems. So that's estrogen dominance, right? And Elena just talked about toxins in the environment, right? The xenoestrogens, these fake estrogens that our brain can mistake for regular, normal human estrogen, and these can cause a lot of issues with this miscommunication. And they actually fit in the receptors of our estrogen receptors in our brain, and they don't behave the way they're supposed to. So things like cleaning products, sunscreens, personal care products, environmental toxins like plastics and glyphosate, and all these things that we're exposed to now that we were never exposed to thousands of years ago, or even when our grandmother was living. She was never exposed to the amount of xenoestrogens that we're exposed to today. And then on top of that, we also have electromagnetic fields, EMFs, that also can alter our hormone balance as well. So we're dealing with a lot of things, not to mention additional stress. We all have jobs, and women are taking care of their families, and we worry about bills, and we're being just bombarded with news and all these things that are causing our brain to light up in ways that it's never lit up before. And this is causing our adrenal glands, so the brain's talking to the adrenal glands now, telling it to make cortisol. Oftentimes, when we have prolonged times of stress, when it's not just a stressor that goes away, prolonged stress will actually kind of tax the adrenal glands, and they might use up all of their raw materials where they just don't have enough materials to put out anymore cortisol, and so they'll actually steal raw materials from other hormones, and this can create an imbalance of progesterone, because the progesterone kind of has the same raw materials as cortisol, just to kind of simplify it. So basically, prolonged stress has a major impact on our brain health as well.
I love how you talk about raw materials. I like when people simplify things. I like to simplify things for myself and also my patients and clients, because it makes it easier, obviously, to understand. And you mentioned bioidentical hormones a few times, and one, I want to get your take on that in a second. But even if first I want to say I'm happy that you brought up how like hormones connect, or like xenoestrogens connect to like receptors that hormones normally do and mimic that. We've talked about that before, and I'm glad that you brought that up. But on that same token, is that how bioidentical hormones work? And is it exactly the same? Because it sounds great, bioidentical hormones.
Okay, so bioidentical hormones are exactly as they sound. They are identical to the hormones that our body makes, whereas estrogens are similar. And so there can't be a case of mistaken identity, but they don't perform the same. Mm-hmm. Similar to the birth control pill. Many people believe that birth control pills are a hormone replacement, but they're actually not. If you look up the ingredients of the oral contraceptive pills that we have here in the United States, they're actually endocrine disrupting compounds. So they're actually these fake estrogens or progesterones that are actually causing disruption to our normal hormone balance. So this is what happens when we have plastics and phthalates and all these different toxins that are in non-organic cleaning supplies, non-organic personal care products, shampoos, hair colors, all of these things that we just are surrounded with. We actually have to make a conscious effort nowadays to dig through the grocery store and find the thing that it does not have the endocrine disrupting chemicals in it. Whereas our grandmother would be able to just go to the store and just pick something, and it wouldn't be as toxic. So it is a bit of a struggle now. We do have to be more aware and more just conscious about the decisions that we make. And, it is possible to live in balance in the modern world, but it just takes a little bit more effort.
So I've got a question. I'm thinking about the whole hormone thing, and I know that you're an expert in helping women, to balance their hormones, which, as women, like all women listening, and the guys too, like we all know that, like we women, we have to have our hormones balanced, or we can just be a hot mess. And so, like, let's say that you've taken me through a process where we've identified, toxins, and we've identified some, maybe some nutrient deficiencies, and we've addressed those. So we've, eliminated the toxins, we've detoxed, and we've put some of the nutrients that I need. But maybe because of my age, like my hormone levels are, suboptimal, right? Like they're, maybe I started out with too much estrogen. Through the detox, we got rid of that, and got things, cleaner. But my estrogen levels are still low, but now my progesterone levels are low, and maybe my estrogen's gone down too low now, and this and that. Like, do you use hormones? And what kinds do you use? And how do you address that? What do you do in that realm?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's not universal. It's not the same for everybody. But what I do try to address first is the root causes, the reasons why hormones might be lower than they should be. And you touched on nutrient deficiencies, you touched on toxins, and those are all great reasons. But it could be something as simple as stress, not sleeping, too much caffeine. Some people may need to cut out gluten or soy because those can be irritants and causing inflammation in the body, which is like an internal stress. We often think about stress as like psychological stress, like thinking about our bills or our husband or our kids, but there's also biological stress, which can be in the form of food sensitivities, things that cause inflammation, allergies. And so those things are things that we can look at as well. It's funny, but having more sex and actually experiencing orgasm can actually raise your estrogen levels. So it's kind of counterintuitive, where when women's hormones are kind of in the tank, they often don't think about having sex, but having more sex can actually increase estrogen levels. Getting acupuncture, looking into meditation, consuming whole organic fermented soy, things like hops, flaxseed, these can all raise your estrogen levels as well. And then we also use things like maca, ginseng, valerian. These all actually can naturally help to raise women's estrogen levels without going straight to adding hormones. Because like I said, it's kind of like a biofeedback loop. So the brain is telling the organs to, the glands, because glands make hormones, the glands to make the hormones, and then the hormones are kind of impacting the brain. So if we can clean up all the areas around it, and we can, remove the stress, remove the sleep deprivation, eat in a way that is supportive of hormone function, exercise in a way that's not too crazy, but gives you your circulation and your blood flow and your oxygen to your brain, then we can kind of evaluate later and see, okay, do we still need to add some bioidentical hormones in? And if that's in the case of that, then yes, we can do that. We can also use glandulars, which are basically parts of the glands that create those hormones and that kind of support the body in producing its own hormones. I always like to go with the route of supporting the body to produce its own first, if that's possible. Now, for women that have gone into surgical menopause or menopause before age 45, then I think it is advisable to add some bioidentical hormones in, because those women are going to be the ones that are going to be at risk for neurodegenerative diseases from having that short time with their estrogen. So it's very individual. We also have to look at other things like diabetes. Women who have diabetes and add hormone replacement in are actually have an increased risk of dementia. So there's a lot of different factors that go into play. Hormone replacement is not right for everybody, but it's also right for some people.
Now, before I ask, I want to ask this question first. I love exercise and fitness, but since we're on the topic, because I want to make sure I get this right, because this is it's not in my field of expertise, but this is yours. Because when you say, in my simple mind, when you say hormone replacement therapy, is that the same as bioidentical hormones?
It doesn't have to be. So there's hormone replacement therapy. It can be abbreviated HRT or HT. That's any hormone. So that's synthetic and bioidentical. So synthetic is made in a lab. It can be patented. Pharmaceutical companies can charge more for them. And so those are often what's sometimes first recommended in conventional medicine. And then you have bioidentical hormones. Those are made by a compounding pharmacy. Those are very similar to the hormones that we use. That's abbreviated BHRT. So, and that's the more natural, that's better for your body, in my opinion. However, women with diabetes, women with certain other health conditions, even bioidentical hormones can actually cause some issues as well if they're not used properly and in the right order.
Right, and that's what I've seen in my patients and heard from other women, like family members when they're on hormone replacement therapy or bioidentical hormones. I want to make sure that it's safe for them.
Yes.
And last question about that on my end is, are they on it? Like, if you go on bioidentical hormones, is it a short-term thing or is it long-term? Like, as far as years and years and
I
years.
understand. My goal is actually to use the lowest possible dose for the shortest possible time. That's always our goal. However, if a woman had a hysterectomy or, had an early menopause for another reason, she may need to be on them long term. And then depending on, the health of the individual, other circumstances, some women are on them a longer period of time and feel good that way, but my goal is always to let the body do the healing. My philosophy is that the body is, innately able to heal itself. And there's many women that live well into their 80s and 90s with optimal cognitive function, wonderful moods, and they feel great, and they're not on any hormones. So it's not a necessary thing, but for some, it's a choice for some women.
And how do you make that, how do you help them to discern or, to make that choice if they're in their, 60s or 70s or 80s, and they're maybe having some cognitive decline and you've ruled out, other things, but you do see that one variable in there is like a hormone imbalance. I mean, you think about it, I'm just thinking from my side, okay, they're 80 years old, yes, hormones are going to be lower. We've ruled out everything else, but their hormones are low. When do you know as a practitioner, like, well, why don't we just try putting you on some hormones and let's see cognitively how you feel? Like, since we're talking about brain stuff and hormones, like, how do you make that decision?
Well, honestly, over the age of 65, if a woman's never been on hormones before, there's a lot of research that actually shows starting hormone replacement therapy, bioidentical or synthetic, between the ages of 65 and 79 or older even, can actually reduce your working memory, your cognitive function, your executive function. So I actually try not to go that route for women in that age range. I'd much rather use maca and flax and soy and hops and things like that to naturally kind of give them those phytoestrogens that are going to act like estrogens in a good way. So phytoestrogens are plant estrogens. Those actually do good in the body for women that are low on hormones, whereas xenoestrogens are chemical, man-made estrogen-like compounds that actually can mess with your balance. So yeah, for women in that age group, I will definitely work on sleep. Most women over 65, especially around, like you said, 80, they're likely to have some issues with sleep. They're going to have some issues with neurotransmitter balance. They're going to have issues with possibly anxiety, worry, fear. So we're going to work on all those things: breathing, making sure they're drinking water, getting some great nutrition in them. And most of the time, because I do have a high percentage of patients in that age range, and more times than not, just going through what I call the foundations of health. So diet, rest, exercise, mindset, meditation, stress reduction, supplementation, all of those things together can actually make a huge difference.
Wow, that sounds a lot like my six-pack of healthy longevity. I love it, yes.
Dreams, like that's my massive with dreams, because I think that like when you follow those things, you can have the life of your dreams.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, and one of my favorites, I alluded to it before, is fitness. That's one of my fitness, exercise, movement. And I know for me, it's not about like doing heavy, long workouts. I know you're a triathlete and you're all.
It's actually funny that you say that, because when I was younger, in my 20s, I used to run like ultra marathons, and that was kind of like how I escaped kind of the stress of my home life. But many of you know my story, many of you don't. I actually struggled with infertility and ultimately ovarian failure at a very young age. And I really tie it back to the constant stress I was putting on my body by beating it up with those long workouts and not getting enough, recovery time. So it's not more is not better in the working out realm. But you did a very balance type of working out and not like overextending or long-term workouts, right, Ryan? You're more like short, convenient workouts.
Yes, I do. I incorporate movement into my day. Like even like these little 5 to 10 minute workouts, like 2 minutes in the morning, just like a 2-minute dumbbell or barbell complex. I don't want to worry the listener about that.
I have a little background because I have a kettlebell and some weights. And then I have just little slides to do like squats. So it's nothing like I'm not even sweating, but sometimes in between these interviews, I'll just get my blood pumping because they always say sitting is the new smoking, right? You've heard that. Everyone's heard that. Well, it's not necessarily that your sitting is bad, but it's prolonged time sitting. It kind of like lowers our body's circulation. It makes us stagnant. We have less oxygen going to our brain. So I find if I get up and do those little bursts like you're talking about, I can actually think better and I feel better.
Oh yeah, I mean the research shows that just obviously the oxygen getting in your brain, but also increases the brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which increases connections, increases memory, helps your mood. So yes, and all too often when we get depressed or anxious, leaky brain, those symptoms of that, we don't want to do that when in fact that's what actually will help even more than sitting down or taking a drug or a medication or something, a lot of times even supplements. We need that physical movement.
That's such a good point, Ryan, because when you think about like going to the gym, right? Like you think about, okay, you gotta like get your workout clothes on, drive, go to the gym, do the like uncomfortable workout there, and get sweaty, and then you get to home, take a shower, and that like when you're depressed, like that's like you're like so unmotivated to do that, even when you're not depressed. That's like kind of like intimidating. But what you just said about like a 2-minute workout with a barbell or a kettlebell, or even body weight, like doing squats or push-ups or whatever you can do, that doesn't take a lot of like prep, and it's not really overwhelming. And the fact is, once you do it, like if you do it just for 30 seconds, you start to feel that difference in your body. So I always recommend starting with like 2 to 5 minutes of exercise.
And I will, the one last thing I'll say about that is I still do my like 30 to 45 minute workouts 3-4 days a week or 2 or 3 days a week. So I still think that's important, but I actually think it's important to get some type of fitness, some type of exercise and movement every single day. Not just 30 minutes 3 times a week. That's not, I don't believe that's going to cut it either, especially for the brain health.
Yeah, our bodies are meant to move, right? Our bodies are designed to move. And they weren't designed to sit in chairs looking at computer screens. And so, yeah, I mean, definitely getting outside and going for a walk, getting in nature is it's so great for your hormones, so great for your brain health, your eye health, overall health in general. Lowers your stress level if you get out and walk in nature. So that alone, if you're not a person that's into meditation, just get out and walk in nature. That could be a huge impact.
Yeah, that's so true. And I spend a lot of time talking to our patients and our clients about that. Even just the simple mechanism of the cross-crawl mechanism that you have with walking fires up the brain in a huge way that can really help preserve cognitive function. So, when you think of exercise, you don't have to, it doesn't always have to be a structured like go to the gym kind of a thing or dumbbells or barbells. If that's not your thing, like I think, Michelle, that's like not my thing. And I will do it. Like I actually hired a trainer in the last 6 months so that I
pretty good. I first met you, I'm pretty impressed with your
yeah. But what do you see me do though? Like I'll go out, I'll ride my bike, I'll do 6-hour hikes. I'll downhill bike, in the mountains. I'll ski for hours. Like that kind of stuff. Because you have to find what you can do so that you can enjoy some physical movement. If you don't find something that you like, then and you always think like the gym is your only option. Then you're really going to struggle with that. And so dancing. That's another one, right? Tennis. Anything like that is going to help with your cognitive function. It also helps you in the beginning stages when you're really sick. And of course, yes, it's the last thing that you want to do because you're just exhausted and depressed and no motivation and all this stuff. But if you can get out and walk at least 15 minutes, not only is it going to help flush out toxins out of your body, but it's going to start firing up your brain and getting your cognitive function working again.
Totally. And like what you kind of alluded to, like I talked about stress being like a major hormone disruptor. And if you're stressed about your workout, if you're like hating your workout, that's going to cause stress, right? And so we don't want your workout or your exercise, which is like a foundation of health. We don't want that to be a cause of stress. So yeah, doing something you enjoy, because even like experiencing joy and happiness is super healthy for your brain and your hormones as well. So you're actually getting a double benefit if you actually enjoy what you're doing when you're working out, for sure.
And you mentioned dancing, Dr. Elena, and that's what my girls do a lot. They'll on YouTube, like we still have our We Fit for Pete's sake. That's like 11 years old.
I love that too.
But they don't even care. They get on YouTube and go to like the We Dance or whatever it's called, or Just Dance. That's what it is. Just Dance, and they do the moves, and that's their workout. It's getting nice here where we are. They're outside doing their workout. So yes, I forego the dancing because they make fun of me because I don't have much rhythm.
For moms with young kids, that's an amazing way not only to get your kids moving, but also get your workout in as well. I remember when Paxton was just a little tiny tot. Sometimes I couldn't go to the gym because I didn't have a gym that had babysitting. And so we'd dance, we'd do like little calisthenics together, we'd chase each other around the house. And that was my workout.
That's awesome. I love that. I just can totally see you and Paxton dancing around the house. Paxton's such an adorable kid.
Speaking of hormone imbalance, I was actually told for many years by conventional medicine and many different doctors that my hormones are so definitely imbalanced. They were at the levels of someone who was in menopause when I was in my 20s. And so I wasn't even supposed to be able to have a child. I was told that I would be infertile for the rest of my life. But I didn't go ahead and start taking hormones right away. What I did is I just tried to make the rest of my body healthier. I had a lot of other health issues like digestive issues, I had acne, I had allergies, I found out I had heavy metal toxicity. So all of these things were something that I knew I could do something about. And so I started just doing the taking care of those little things. And then eventually my hormones actually started coming back online. And I was able to have my son naturally. So even if you think like your hormones are done, I went 10 years with no periods, 10 years of really symptoms of menopause, hot flashes, brain fog, hair loss, all of those things that were happening to me early in my life. And so whether you're 35, 25, 55, or 65, it doesn't matter. You can influence your hormone health. And so, it's a message that I really always want to bring out, and Paxton, my son, always reminds me of that.
What did your mental health look like? When your hormones were off like that, what was your mental health like during that time? Because a lot of the same things that you're saying that were ultimately causing these hormone imbalances for you, those are the same types of things that cause a lot of mental health and neurodegenerative disease issues too.
Oh, for sure. I mean, my mental health was not good. I had a lot of anxiety. I was tired all the time, and I would have a lot of brain fog. I was in school, and I was doing well, and I was studying a lot, but I just could not remember anything. I went to the doctor and I told him about my symptoms, and I was prescribed antidepressants. I was prescribed pain medication because I'd get headaches all the time. And so, my mental health really suffered, and I didn't really have much to compare it to because my whole family actually, on my mom's side of the family, all has mental health issues. So I don't know if it was even partially hereditary. But once I started cleaning up heavy metals, getting my digestion working well, because even if you have constipation, that alone could actually be sending toxins back into your system and creating imbalances in your hormones. And I didn't realize you can actually change my digestion, my detoxification, and my hormones. I didn't realize all that at the time. And now looking back, it makes so much sense.
I love that all of our interviews, or probably all of them, are coming back to this one point of when you fix your health and work on your health, these other symptoms go away. At least that's how I put it in my simple terms. It's not just attacking whatever the symptom is. It's not just attacking where you're feeling it, brain fog, anxiety, depression, and throwing a pill at it because, I mean, what is it now? The CDC and the Mayo Clinic, they've shown that 7 in 10 Americans are on a prescription drug. 20% are on 5 or more. That 40 to 59-year-olds, and I think, yeah, we're all in that age group, right? Here, us here. And what that means is the most common ones for that age group are antidepressants and heart medications for blood pressure and cholesterol. If we keep just following that, so I love doing summits like these, both hosting them and being on them, and I know you two do as well, because the more that we do it, the more people keep hearing this over and over again. The more hopefully that'll start to brainwash them because they keep hearing it over and over
It's true.
again.
You know, like our symptoms are really just our body telling us something's wrong, right? So it's kind of like if you have, I always talk about like you have a smoke detector going off in your house, right? So that would be like the symptom, the noise of the smoke detector. What do you do? Do you go and like take the battery out to stop the noise, or do you try to find out where the smoke's coming from? And so with our body, like do we just take a medication to suppress the symptom, or do we want to know where it's coming from? Do we want to get to that root cause? And that's really what it's all about, because when you do, it impacts your hormones, it impacts your brain health, it impacts your cardiovascular health, your detoxification, like all areas of health are impacted when you solve that dysfunction.
Wow, that's so true. You know, it doesn't, just to kind of recap what you said, it doesn't matter what your symptoms are. It doesn't matter what diagnosis that you have.
Yeah.
It matters, you know, figuring out what the root cause is, because you can have the same root causes in the same 10 people, and each one of those 10 people ends up with a different diagnosis, or it affects them in a different way, which is just, you know, looking at the weak link in the chain, you know, to understand how, like, I'm going to be affected versus how you, versus how Ryan is going to be. And I just love how you make it simple for people to understand.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of the things that I really try to strive, because the topics that I cover, female hormones, genetics, those are very difficult and also kind of like intimidating topics. But by really getting in and understanding and researching them, and then try to interpret them into everyday language that people can actually relate to, that's where people are going to make the changes. Because if you know why you're doing a certain action, or you're eating a certain food, or you're not eating a certain food, if you know why, if you know what that relates to in your mind, if you're like, okay, if I eat gluten, it's going to impact my metabolism, and it's going to make me tired, and it's going to give me brain fog, so therefore I don't want gluten. But if you're just not eating gluten because it's bad for you or bad for your hormones, but you don't understand why, then you're less likely to stick with that, and you're less likely to get results. So I think like making it easy to understand is so important. Like people really do need to understand their health, and unfortunately, like growing up in the medical system as I knew it, no one ever explained to me what lab tests meant. No one explained to me why I was being prescribed a medication. No one explained to me like what was going on in my body. And so it was really hard for me to even understand that there was anything I could do. And you know, I think that it's very disempowering. It's a very limited view of human health in general. And you know, I have a very limitless view of like what the body is capable of. And I think when people really can understand, even on like a basic level, they'll innately kind of choose the things that are going to be good for their body if they understand how it works. So I think it's just really important. And that's why like events like this, we're kind of break down topics a little bit at a time, and you hear from different experts that explain things in a slightly different way. You're going to click with one of them, and you're going to understand a little bit differently how your body works, and you're going to be able to make that change.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And one of those topics that you mentioned that can be confusing, we talked a lot about hormones, but the other one is genetics. And one, explaining how that works to patients, because I know a lot of them think, and they've told me as well, my mom and dad had this, or so my family. So they say, well, it's not going to be me, but you can tell in the back of their mind they're just already preparing themselves for it. So one, how do the genes actually play a role? Because you mentioned your family history of mental health issues. how do genes and genetics play a role in this, let's just say mental health, since this is a Leaky Brain Summit?
Yeah, so we have genes that code for many different things, like for hormone levels, for susceptibility to anxiety, for neurotransmitter levels. So our genes, we get one pair from our dad and one pair from our mom together. We have one copy of each gene. And that becomes our genotype, or what we're coded for that trait per se. And genes can be impacted by everything that we do. So every bite we take, every move we make, every thought we have, everything we're exposed to, how our relationships, how we live our life. This can all impact how those genes actually express or how they actually play out. So someone can have a risk for, say, Alzheimer's disease, and they can be in the high-risk category, and then you have another person who's in the low-risk category. And that doesn't mean that the person who is in the low risk is going to not get Alzheimer's. It just means they have a lower probability of getting it, and then the person in the high risk has a higher probability. Now, there's a lot of things that you can do to make that probability less. If you have a high probability, how you eat, whether or not you smoke is big, so certain types of fats, so lowering your saturated fat and focusing on monounsaturated fats is super helpful when it comes to someone with a high Alzheimer's risk. Dementia as well, not smoking, getting exercise. So if you're someone who has a high risk because of a family history, and you know that, you can actually do things in your life to ensure that doesn't become your reality.
And give some examples on that, because whenever you and I do genetic testing on people, we can really get into all the details. It's kind of like the operations manual for a car, right? Like we can do everything. Like kind of give people an idea of things that they can learn to do, like exercise, things like that.
I kind of just talked about the type of fats that you choose, right? So that's like something that we often don't think about. We think about carbs, fats, and proteins, and we think about some people do a keto diet, some people do a vegan diet, and a lot of times we just attribute the results to weight loss. But the types of foods that you're actually choosing can have a major impact on how your genes play out. So that's like one example, but there's genes that can code for like anxiety, sleep issues, addictive qualities, whether or not you have a motivation drive. There's actually a study done on rats where rats that had actually coded for lower dopamine levels, they actually would do less. So dopamine is kind of our reward neurotransmitter. And what they did with the rats is they put the rats in this little environment, and they had a pile of food that was kind of like not that interesting food, just boring food, and that was like easy to get. And then there was a bigger pile of delicious food that was put behind a little bit of a wall. So it was a bigger effort to get to the bigger reward, and the rats with lower dopamine actually would just go over to the easy to get pile of food, but the rats with more dopamine would actually go over and exert more effort for the bigger reward, and we can see that in people as well. Some people are just less motivated, and they'll just do the bare minimum to have an average life, where people who have higher dopamine levels will actually do more for a bigger reward, and so you can actually do things to alter that with your diet and lifestyle, which is, it's phenomenal to know that you're given kind of a set of code, but you have so many things you can do to impact that. And you can impact it negatively too. So if you start smoking and eating fast food and putting toxins into your food and they'll slather your body with chemicals, you can actually negatively impact your genes as well. So it's not that if you have, per se, good genes that you're just going to live a great life. So it's the interplay between how we live and what our genetics say. And genetics are only about 30% of the disease outcome. It's 70% environment. And when I say environment, that's everything around your genes. So that's how you live, where you live, what you're exposed to, stress, all those things play into whether or not that hereditary condition actually is going to be part of your life.
And I'm glad you mentioned the 70-30% breakdown, because that's typically what I've heard and seen. And that's probably even conservative in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I mean, genes do have some play. I mean, there are some genes that are stronger than others as well. But how you actually live is the bigger impact. And even with the immune system, it's huge where some people have just little gaps in their immune system. So maybe they don't do as well at certain functions. But if you actually supplement strategically with nutrients that you need or extra rest, then you can actually perform wonderfully and have a perfect immune system. So it's not all genetic. It's definitely, we have the power to impact how our life is.
And I'm a living testament to that, right? Like the understanding my genetics helps me to recover my brain function. And I just thank God every day that I, learned about that, and that I was able to really dig in there and figure that out, because it showed me what changes I needed to make in my lifestyle, and what changes I needed to make in my nutrition, and even with so much specificity, what supplements that I needed, and even at what dose I needed them at, so that I could get my health back. And so, I just can't speak highly enough about genetic testing and using that, to show you, how you can live, your limitless best life possible.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, it's really important, I believe, to actually work with someone who understands genetics, because there's a lot of direct-to-consumer companies out there that will give you a report. And they might only be actually reporting on one or two genes per area, and they can kind of give you a little bit of a swayed result and tell you need to supplement with like 30 different things. But like you just said, like strategically, exactly knowing which ones you need and which ones you don't. Because no one's going to take 30 supplements and benefit from that. Knowing strategically where your body has those gaps or those holes that you can fill and support the body in doing what it needs to do. It's not about taking over and just giving yourself supplements to do the job. It's actually giving yourself the raw materials and the support that it needs to actually perform optimally. And genetics has a huge impact on detoxification, on weight, on mental health, on brain health, heart health, GI health. There's so many factors. And with hormones, when we look at genetics, we're actually able to see within a range, because testing really, there's such a broad range that there's a lot of times there's people test normal and they're really are having issues that should be addressed, but the ranges in conventional medicine are so wide that they kind of show it's normal, but it's really not. Where when you see your genetics, you actually have a better idea of where you should fall on that spectrum. Some people genetically should have higher levels of thyroid hormone or higher levels of estrogen, and that's their normal. So like understanding what your normal is specifically to you can be super important when you're looking at testing as well.
Yeah, I like that. I actually love it. What's normal for you? It's not. Because we get too much into that. I want to go back to one thing as we end, because I want to make sure people got it. We glossed over a little bit, but it's your dreams. I don't know if you call it your dream system or dreams protocol, and make sure the listener knows what that is.
Yeah, so it's diet. So when I say diet, that's your nutrition, everything that you're kind of taking into your body. It's rest and recovery, so that's the R. So that's sleep. That's just relaxation, taking time out for yourself. There's exercise. Then there is the A is actually attitude. So like how you feel about yourself, whether you're doing like positive things, or if you're consuming positive information. So you're not watching the news all the time that's about like doom and gloom. You're also consuming positive information, like the summit. You're actually learning from people that are actually giving you good advice, whether it's the Bible or you're reading poetry. That's your attitude. And then there is the M, which is mindset and meditation. And then there's the S, which is stress reduction. So stress reduction is a huge category, right? So that's your biochemical stress, so removing allergens and toxins and food sensitivities. And then there's the physical stress. So it's like sitting for long periods of time during repetitive movement, injuries, things like that. That's the physical stress. And then there's the emotional, mental stress. So that's, things that we worry about, bad relationships, financial stress. So all of those things are stress. So everything we can do to put ourselves in a better place, getting support, having relationships, talking to other people, connecting, all of those things go under stress reduction.
Yeah, I wanted you to get that in there to give a little bit more explanation of that, just so people understood that. Those are all the things that, like in this hour that we've been talking about, is how to, in general, make your body healthy, your cells work better, and that's the way you do it, is through this dream system.
And even the genetics actually just helps us to customize that a little bit more. Looking at your symptoms personally, looking at what you're exposed to and what your lifestyle looks like, and then layering the genetics can really help us come up with a really precise lifestyle prescription for each individual. And it's like they're very broad topics, stress reduction, but what exactly do you need to do first and most to move the needle for you?
Yeah. And I know a lot of my patients, a lot of clients, a lot of people listening to this will think stress is just all emotional, mental stress. Oh my God, I'm so stressed, but it's, like you said, it's the physical, it's the chemical, it's the even spiritual stress that we can have. So I'm glad that you brought all that up and tied a nice bow around it, because that's what we, I like simple things, I like simple concepts, making them easy for people to understand, and that's my goal for this summit. I know it's Dr. Elena's goal for this summit, that it's consumable, that people can understand it if they find value in it, which I think they have by this point. They found value in it with you, with all of our other expert speakers. We're giving you the best of the best here, because we want you to be successful in your health journey. We want you to understand what leaky brain is, because it's a new concept for a lot of people. What the heck is leaky brain? It's not like you got hit on the side of the head and brains are leaking out. It's the tears, or not even tears in the blood-brain barrier, but how toxins affect, how infections affect, how our thoughts affect the health of our brain, blood-brain barrier, tied directly to mental issues, leading to Alzheimer's, dementia, and other neurodegeneration. So, holy cow, Dr. Michelle, I'm so happy that you're here. I know Dr. Elena is ecstatic. We always love spending time with each other. So even if it's on Zoom, I still love it, but definitely in person, we'll get together at some point again. But for the listeners, thank you for being here. If you want to own this, I highly encourage that, so you can put this on repeat. Like Dr. Michelle said, we want that stress reduction. What are we putting in our heads? And this is one of those things that will help bring you up, inspire you to live your highest potential life.